Alliance War has taken a drastic but temporary turn when it comes to this new A Big Thing Alliance War season. This season changes everything about war, other than the fact that you assign attackers and you assign defenders, everything is different. So, in that case, that means that it's a brand new game mode for me to talk about, and in this case, I'm going to be talking about the pros and the cons and the things that I just think are mid about the Alliance War Big Thing. And I will put it this way. I originally hated this game mode. I actually thought it was one of the worst things ever. But now, as of the time of recording this, I don't hate it as much as I used to. And that's why we're talking about not only the cons, which is what I came up with originally, but also the pros of this game mode, because it's not all bad. It's really not. There are some cool things and cool ideas that come from the game mode. Was it executed correctly? I really don't think it was, but that's what we're here to talk about today. And so I'm going to let a bunch of war gameplay play out in the background while I go over my pro-con list and just take a little bit of time to discuss how I feel about Alliance War, A Big Thing. And without further ado, let me just get started with the pros. First being the lack of item tax. And what I mean by that is because of the fact that you are only taking one fight at war, unless you die to that fight, you are never using an item, which is really, really good. I had probably my most expensive season ever, loyalty-wise, the season before this one. And currently, as of the time of recording this, I have not died in war yet, meaning I haven't used a single potion because I don't have a reason to heal up any of my champs if I'm only taking one fight and I don't die to that one fight. Now, that doesn't include gray boosts. That doesn't include power back boosts either. But I don't think that's really significant enough to really deter my opinions on it being really great for its lack of item tax. This game mode now is letting you use significantly less items, which is overall a very good thing if you're a war player, because for a long time, if you were a high tier war player, loyalty went to just potions and boosts and that's it. Now you have some flexibility if you die to your fights a lot less. And even if you die like once or twice this season, that's still, like, you are only taking one fight, you don't have to heal your character once or twice, it's still really good, item tax wise. So anyway, that is a big pro for me, the significantly lower amount of items that need to be used. So, moving on to my second point, it has easier and quicker war planning when it comes to this new game mode. And so, when you cut the amount of fights on a map by literally 5 times, like we have 20% of the defenders that were on the old map, it makes things, generally faster and generally easier to plan, because in a lot of scenarios on the old map, it's just like, okay, I need someone to go here and take this mini, but they might not be able to take this path fight, so I need to find some kind of path that they can take, but then they need a synergy champion, and it's just like, oh my goodness, what the hell am I supposed to do to actually get this map planned? That happened to me a lot. I've been war planning for 6 seasons. And now, it's a lot easier. It's just like, you find the best counter for every defender, and because of the fact that you only need one champion, it's so much easier to be able to get a player here, get a player there, and not have to worry about, oh, but this person can't be 2 places at once. Well, they don't need to be. And that's one of the best things about this, is that because of the fact that, again, it is just one fight, it makes it easier to plan. And it also, again, makes it quicker to plan. I was probably taking about 50 minutes to plan the first 3 wars, because it was still rather brand new to me. I'm still trying to figure out, like, what is the best thing for this thing. Irony in that sentence. But on the old map, it would probably take me on average 90 minutes to plan. So it's cutting my planning time by almost in half on the first week of the season, and now it legitimately takes me like 15 minutes to plan. It's so great, and I do love the lack of time I'm consuming on this new map when it comes to planning. So, moving on to my third point. This one's a bit silly, but it is the last pro I have in the list, and that is big damage, which is silly to say, but it's also, like, really, really fun. Like, just the fact that you're doing, like, hundreds of thousands of damage on one hit with your champions, it's so fun to do, so fun to watch. And it's just a really, really interesting concept that, you know, raids also used, but I actually prefer the way that this war season does it than raids. When it comes to the fact that the opponent is taking more damage. You're not doing more damage. The defender is taking more damage. It's very different because this means that every effect you're doing is boosted. Whereas in raids, infamously, red numbers are pretty bad. Using red numbers is not very good when you're trying to find a raids attacker. Not all the time, like sometimes it works with some DOT hacks, but generally, raids, you want to use big yellow numbers champ. That's why, like, Iron Man, for example, is always so consistent. And the war season kind of changed that by making it to where, hey, the defender takes more damage. The attacker doesn't do more damage on their hits and stuff like in raids. Defender takes more damage, so everything that the attacker does looks more flashy. If it's red, if it's yellow, if it's orange, if it's white numbers. So, anyway. Moving on from here, we're going to talk about the mid or mediocre section of how I feel about this war map. Because in this section, we're going to talk about things that either I think are good and other players think are bad, or just things that I think are good and bad at the same time personally. So it can mean both things. And for something that I think is good and bad personally is kind of my first point, which is the one fight war aspect. Now, this is coming from a person who would actively seek out to try to get 9 fight wars in the old map. I love taking a lot of fights on the old map. I find war to be the most exhilarating, the most fun, the most strategic game mode for me, and I always wanted to do as much as I could to help my alliance and to just have fun in the game mode myself. So I would always look to have a lot of wars, or a lot of big wars, I should say. The fact that it's now only one fight takes a lot of that excitement away. It makes it a lot less interesting, a lot less stressful, which, you know, stress is generally a bad thing, but I guess I could say, like, a lot less adrenaline on myself when I'm only doing one fight wars. And I say that when I'm fighting, like, one of the hardest nodes on the map right now with this Dazzler versus Photon. This was one of the hardest fights when it came out. Photon is still placed here. Dazzler's not as good for it anymore because of the saga change, but more on that later. But, like, it's nice that, again, for the points I used earlier, one fight wars are good for item tax. They're good for easier, quicker planning. But at the same time, it was just really fun to have a super big war, make a long YouTube video talking about the planning process of this war and stuff. And understand that another reason this is in the mid category is because a lot of people love that it's one fight wars because they didn't want to take big wars, and I totally understand that, and I think that is completely fair and valid. I'm just not the type of person who wanted a short war. I would never want to be a path demon in war personally. That's just who I am. But I think that if you want to be a path demon in war, that's totally justified, and I completely understand why you might want to do that. Again, why it's in the mid section. So, anyway, my second point that I think is mid or mediocre is the emphasis on the saga. And this is interesting because, like, okay, war naturally has an emphasis on the saga now. Ever since they started doing sagas, okay, there's going to be these 2 classes that are going to be much boosted on attack, and then not really the case for defense, because it was just the way the war tactics worked. Okay, these 2 classes are going to be the war tactic. I think it works functionally different in this game mode, because there isn't like a specific set of tactic defenders that you're often going to see on some of the hardest nodes on the map, like you would in war. Now it's just the hardest defenders in general. Like, you're going to see Yelena, Onslaught, Photon, Serpent, all of those are going to be on this war map, with some exceptions, of course. Like, you might not see a lot of Dark Phoenix on this war map, but still, that's kind of the whole thing that I'm getting the idea from, like the whole general idea I'm getting from this mode, I should say. A couple exceptions, like, okay, Node 3, you're putting a person who's gonna mess with regenerate modification on this node. But for the most part, the problem I have with the emphasis on the saga is the fact that some of the hardest defenders, such as Yelena, for example, don't have counters that get a Saga boost. For instance, no mutant champion can get the Saga boost, meaning they are doing half the damage that a Saga champ would do. Meaning they are, shall I say, much more likely to time out than a Saga champ. And the fact that no mutant in the game is a Saga champion means Yelena is just immediately one of the most busted defenders by default, even more so than usual, because of how much more of a risk she is of killing you because you're in the fight for too long, or just forcing you to time out, because not a single mutant champ, which are generally her best counters, are included in that Saga pool that give you double the attack. And if I remember correctly, the classes that are excluded from this pool are mutant and skill, meaning the same goes for like Photon. Okay, so you want to use a really good skill champ to fight Photon, but they're all going to do half the damage of the other classes. So it's just something I don't like personally. Like, is it a bad design? I don't know, but it just means that like the biggest skill defenders and the biggest science defenders are immediately much worse to fight than the biggest cosmic defender. And when you have a game mode that's basically designed, or a war map that's basically designed to where the best defenders thrive, the fact that Photon is so much more threatening the Serpent this meta, just as an example, because of the Saga boost, just doesn't feel right. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Saga, the way it works. Like, I think that you can have an emphasis on the Saga and it work fine. Like, what I would do personally is, instead of a 15% Vigor boost for non-Saga, I'd make it 20. I think that makes much less timeouts happen, and it's still, you can keep the Saga at 30%. I think that's fine. It still emphasizes you send a Saga Cosmic Champ over a non-Saga Cosmic Champ, but it means that if you have to send a non-Saga Cosmic Champ, or in this case a Mutant or a Skilled Champ, they are much less likely to time out, which we're going to talk about timeouts later. But anyway, that concludes the section of the video where I talk about the things that I think are mid or mediocre about the new war format. Now I'm going to talk about my cons. So, starting with con number 1, I think that this is a poorly designed RPG map, at least when it shipped. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm going to use Node 1 as the biggest example. Node 1 was just a friggin' nightmare for a lot of the season, because, like, dude, if you put, like, Photon or Yelena, I'm going to keep going back to those, if you put them on that node, you're forced to use a tech champ or specific mystic champs, or, well, specific tech champs too, for crying out loud. Like, there aren't that many champs that place cowardice or do invalidate, especially in the tech class nowadays. And it's just like, okay, you put one of those defenders there, dang, I'm forced to use a mystic or a tech champ here, and they might not be very good for Photon or Yelena. Now, of course, there is going to be an option that will solo, like Iron Man for Photon, a Mega Sentinel for Yelena, but, like, that's, like, one option. And when you only have one option that can work for a fight without timing out or dying, it doesn't feel great. Like, take an example of, like, a Hazard Shift Photon or something. And I'm using this in, like, a better sense. There are, like, plenty of different champions who can be immune to a Incinerate and benefit from Odin, or resistant to both Incinerate and Shock, or even just immune to one of them and you play around both of the Incinerate and Shocks, and still be able to solo the fight. But on some nodes, that just doesn't work that way, because of how niche the RPG asks are. And furthermore, with niche RPG asks, it, like, move on to a different node. This one's bad in the opposite sense, where I'm going to take node 6 and node 8, both of those. Now, these are bad in the opposite sense, because what node 6 and node 8 do is they make one specific champion completely busted on this node, to where you don't want to send another attacker because of how great the brute force is of these two champs. And for node 6, that is Dust because of her Force Purify, and for node 8, that is Kushala because of her Force Nullify. And I just don't like the fact that it's just making those two attackers immediately the best thing, almost no matter what defender is there, because of how much they're taking advantage of that RPG design. There aren't that many characters with Force Purify or Force Nullify in the game, so when Kushala and Dust are already as good attackers as they are, you place anyone on node 6 and it's probably going to be Dust taking it, and it's probably going to be Kushala taking on node 8. It's just something I don't like personally, where it's like, okay, this attacker is always going to this fight. I'd rather it be more diverse, more like the old war, where it's like, dude, there's going to be so many different attackers being assigned to so many different things. And I think that was one of the best things about war, is it emphasized so many different champions, because there was so many different problems that need to be solved. But if one champion is just going to be the best almost no matter what, then there's no longer that flexibility and no longer allowing the other champions to shine as much, because Dust and Kushala, just as an example, are taking all the spotlight on node 6 and 8. Okay, moving on to my second con with the new war map, and that is timeouts. I think the timeouts are awful. I think they're stupid. They're my least favorite thing about this entire war map. I haven't timed out yet, but I have seen so many people in my alliance timeout. More timeouts than you will ever see in any season on the old war format. There were wars where it's like a third of our deaths or more are just from timeouts, and a lot of that is because of the whole emphasis on the crappy saga mechanic, to where like I don't have to, but I want to send a mutant to Yelena, but they might time out because they get half the attack that the rest of the pool does. It's just like, it should be simple, where it's like, okay, make the fight timer longer to 10 minutes. I don't know if they want to do that. I don't know if it's right to do that, but it's just like, dude, the amount of timeouts that are happening, it's almost like a timeout is more frustrating than an actual death. Because oftentimes with an actual death, you know what you did wrong. Oftentimes with a timeout, it's just like, I couldn't play this any differently. I was just going to lose an attack bonus no matter what. And coming from a planner, it's just like, I have to send my player who's likely going to time out here, because there's not much else I can do when I need to counter a Yelena on a node where you really have to send a mutant champ here, but they have much less attack. It's just super frustrating. And even like Gentle taking Bullseye was so friggin' awful, because like Gentle would destroy Bullseye, but it's the fact that he doesn't have that saga boost. He was gonna time out and lose an attack bonus when he didn't even come close to dying. And like now that Bastion's in play, it's much less of a problem for Bullseye. But just the fact that you can send the best counter to Bullseye in Gentle on a node where Gentle is still getting consistent charge gain, because usually it was on node 9 where you just have to counter as heavy, and they still time out, is completely ridiculous in my opinion. And anyway, my last con, this one isn't as big a deal as the other two, but I'm not a big fan of the centralization on just the same defenders. Like I mentioned earlier, where it's like, you're always going to see Yelena, you're always going to see Photon, you're always going to see Serpent on this map. And like, okay, that was going to be the case on the old map too. But I feel like when they're making a map that's very focused on different RPG mechanics, okay, you want Cowardice, you want Nullify, you want Purify, you want champions who intercept a lot, you want champions who gain a lot of combo meter, you want champions who are resistant or immune to or can purify a lot of specific hatchetive debuffs. All this stuff is very focused on RPG, which was of course the case on the old map too, but a lot of that was also just like, okay, you can just send a skill-ask kind of thing here. And now it's just like, you're gonna place Serpent on a node where you don't want to send a Mystic. You're gonna place friggin' Yelena on a node where you don't want to send a Mutant. I'm just spitballing a bunch of examples here. It's just, I don't know, I think they're focusing very well on the RPG mechanics. I do think that focusing on the RPG mechanics is a very cool thing, but it's just when there's defenders in the game where it's like, you have to send them with their class advantage matchup, and then the Mystic class doesn't want to take this, or the Mutant class doesn't want to take this, because of the RPG asks that are given. It's just, I don't know, it's really weird and something that I'm not a big fan of. Like, okay, the node where you want to send an intercept, or the node where you want to intercept a lot, okay, that's, you know, something that any class can do. The node where you want to gain combo, that's also something any class can do, which I don't really like node for because I think it's way too simple, so that's a bad example. The node where you need to counter specials or heavies, I actually like that one as well from an RPG perspective because it's less RPG, so when you place stuff like Serpent or Bullseye or generic top 5 defender here, it's not, you know, the worst thing ever if you send an out of class matchup. But anyway, I'm just not a big fan of it. Like, the biggest cons for me are just how poorly designed the RPG aspects were when it first released, and even to an extent somewhat now. I just don't think it's designed well enough to be shipped. Like, I feel like we were just kind of the test monkeys for something that was completely unfinished, which just doesn't feel right. It's just like, every single time they released an update or a change to one of the nodes, I'm just like, okay, I feel disrespected that I had to take this at such an unfinished state. I feel disrespected that this was a game mode that we made knowing it's not fully ready. Like, what, node 1 has gotten 2-3 changes already? Like, dude, I understand that's gonna be to an extent difficult to get everything tested correctly before it's released to the general public, but when you're changing a node like 3 times mid-season, it just feels disrespectful. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And then, yeah, timeouts are probably just my biggest con. Like, I hate everything about how many timeouts are in this game mode. I cannot stand the timeout aspect. So, that's my video, guys. Like, there are good things about this war map. There are bad things about this war map. It's something that can totally be improved upon in the future. I would not hate to see this again. If they can make it feel good, if they can fix the quirks and stuff that I don't really like and that just generically aren't working, or generally aren't working, I think this could be a really fun game mode. I wouldn't take this over regular war all the time. But I would, you know, like, every 2 or 3 seasons, like, this coming back, I wouldn't mind it, like, genuinely. And even, like, this would be, like, perfect. This would be a perfect thing to have during the holiday season, like, during Christmas time when they, like, shortened the war season, so it wouldn't be around Christmas. Like, I think they could bring this back for December because of how much simpler it is, and don't have to worry about ending it before Christmas happens. Like, you can make this season go during Christmas, and because the fact it's one fight, because the fact it's so much simpler to plan, I really don't think it would be something that you need to shorten, and it would just work really well during busy times, like during the holidays and stuff. So yeah, I think this map has a lot of potential. I just don't like it in its current state, and I want to see it come back, but I want to see it come back improved. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with in the comment section below. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this one, because I was asking multiple players and trying to think of a bunch of different reasons myself why this mode works, why it doesn't. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.